Joining me now, National Security Advisor to the Trump administration, 30 days in, is Mike Waltz. Mr. Advisor, I want to talk to you about what's happening with the Democrat Party and the concern about Donald Trump pursuing peace, which is what he campaigned on.
Yeah, isn't it a little odd, Laura, that the same party that has been pounding the table and waving their hands in the air for a ceasefire, demanding it, including Kamala Harris, Joe Biden, what have you, in Gaza, is now completely opposed to President Trump being the president of peace and ending the war in Ukraine. I mean, it's just, it's nonsensical. And I think it's just, let's oppose all things President Trump's trying to do. What did I say today at the press conference with our great spokeswoman, Caroline Levitt? Who in the world is against peace? He is determined to drive both of these parties to the negotiating table. He's determined to apply diplomacy, and only President Trump, as said by Putin on the call and as said by Zelensky on the call, back-to-back calls, could get it done. We had a follow-up meeting in Riyadh hosted by the Saudis to talk to the Russians and talk about how to get this war over with. Meanwhile, the killing fields continue. Zelensky needs to sign this economic partnership with the United States. It's an incredible opportunity for him and for the future of Ukraine. And once we get a ceasefire in place, we can get all of these things done.
Now, Senator Ruben Gallego, sir, shared his thoughts about what President Trump said about Zelensky the other day. Watch.
He's more willing to be bullies to our friends than to actual bullies, because he's a weak man at the core. He's afraid of people like Putin, because Putin is an actual strong man. So that's the way that he operates as a bully, is he goes after people that tend to be friends who are going to react to him in a more, I would say, lenient way. But real bullies, he's afraid of.
So saying that Donald Trump is weak for wanting to pursue peace and genuinely being concerned about the suspension of civil liberties in Ukraine. Obviously, the Orthodox Church, all the things we know that Zelensky has done. Some of it's popular, a lot of it is not. Your reaction tonight to this?
Well, I would just remind him and others that Putin invaded, his neighbor under President Bush, Georgia, under Obama, Ukraine in 2014, not under President Trump, and then again under Biden. So Putin is clearly emboldened by perceived weakness and deterred by strength, and he understands President Donald J. Trump will go toe-to-toe with him, with Xi, with Kim Jong-un, or anyone else. But President Trump also prefers diplomacy. He prefers, I mean, this is just like the Democrats turned completely upside down. When did they become the party of continuing a war that, by all accounts, was endless, had settled into a brutal, destructive stalemate with no end in sight, costing the entire world blood and treasure Again, Biden had no theory of victory. President Trump does, and that's the plan we're putting in place.
Mr. Waltz, another concern is that the president has said, all hell would basically rain down on Hamas if all the hostages, weren't released. Well, they're releasing some dead hostages, Hamas, with those hideous videos circulating on the internet of Hamas parading through the streets with the coffins of children and their mother. I mean, it's just the most depraved, evil thing you can imagine. But what can we expect more from this administration, given the fact that these hostages still, all of them, some have, but many still have not been released?
Well, Laura, and I'll just let everyone know that sadly and tragically, we thought that family perhaps had been killed by an errant bombing. In fact, we now know that Hamas executed them. These are twin children. These are babies. This was their mother. This is a sick terrorist organization no different than ISIS, and we cannot have Gaza ruled by a terrorist organization. Hamas has to be destroyed. We'll continue to enter in to some type of negotiation to get as many hostages out, but at the end of the day, Gaza will be ruled by Hamas no more, who has repeatedly said their full intent is to have more October 7th, more attacks. They fully intend to continue to attack Israel if allowed to remain in place. And we stand with Israel in making sure that doesn't happen.
Well, I mean, the idea that they could continue to live there, we don't have the video for some reason, but I mean, it's the most depressing, depraved video of Hamas and children clapping at the bodies of these small children being removed from where they were being kept. I mean, applauding, clapping, cheering. That's who we're dealing with. That's what they've done to their children in Gaza. And the idea that any of these people could remain is ludicrous, completely ludicrous.
But let's even go back, rewind the clock back last year, when you had people in our college campuses chanting from the river to the sea, the anti-Semitism that we saw, naked and bare in front of the world, and cheering on an organization that would do things like this, a terrorist group that has radicalized the next generation as well. So this is a complex issue, but what is crystal clear is Hamas has got to go, their leadership has to go, and we are working with the Israelis to do just that.
Mike, as always, thank you very much.